One, two, three, four.
You are listening to SKYLIT, the SKYLIT Books podcast. SKYLIT Books is a general interest bookstore in the Los Feliz neighborhood in Los Angeles. You can shop with us from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or visit us online 24/7 at skylitbooks.com. Follow along at SKYLIT Books Instagram and Twitter. You can subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Thank you for listening, and now on to the episode.
Hello, my beautiful and lovely listeners, and welcome to SKYLIT. Some of you, welcome back. This is the SKYLIT Books podcast, and I'm your host, Lance Morgan. Today, I'm so excited to welcome Alix Ohlin to talk about her new book, We Want What We Want. But before we start, I want to remind you that SKYLIT Books is now currently open, but we are following the mask mandate, so please don't forget to bring your mask to the store, but come on by. We also are still available for online ordering on our website, www.skylitbooks.com, where you can do still offering like curbside pickups or in-store pickups at this point now. So check us out online. Alix Ohlin is the author of 6 books, including Dual Citizens, which was shortlisted for the Scotiabank Giller Prize. Her work has also appeared in The New Yorker, Best American Short Stories, and many other places. She lives in Vancouver, where she's the director of the UCB School of Creative Writing, where I will say she's our podcast editor, Mick, who's probably listening to this as he edits. She was one of her students, so highly praised at SKYLIT. Alix, thank you so much for coming on by. And by that I mean is that like good Zoom etiquette now to say come on by Zoom?
Come stop by my Zoom.
Stop by my Zoom, yeah. An open door Zoom.
Thanks so much for having me on your Zoom and on the podcast. I'm really happy to be here.
No, I'm so excited to have you in. You have a reading for us today?
I do, yeah. I thought I would read a little bit of one of the stories from We Want What We Want.
I'm so excited. To give our readers a preview, which story is it? Because I'm so excited. I love all these stories.
Yeah, this story is called Money, Geography, Youth, and it is set in Los Angeles. And I was going to read from the beginning, so you don't need any explanation or anything of what the setup is.
Perfect.
Should I go ahead and do it now?
You're all good, yeah.
I'll go ahead and start. This is Money, Geography, Youth. Vanessa was home. She repeated the word to herself, tucked into her childhood bed, a twin with a pink comforter that barely covered the reach of her adult body and was somehow all the more comforting for that, hoping that if she whispered it often enough, the place would feel like it was supposed to. In Ghana, she'd slept on a cot in a room with 3 other volunteers, and when she closed her eyes at night, she fantasized about luxuries she'd once taken for granted: a long shower, a sweating bottle of Arizona green iced tea. Every 2 weeks, when the NGO officer swung by and granted them each 15 minutes of internet access on his laptop, instead of answering emails, she browsed the Instagram accounts of her LA friends, gazing at their bright but bleary faces, their arms around drunk friends at parties in the first year of college they were all enjoying. On her own Facebook, she'd quickly post some line about how Africa was changing her life. She felt so grateful and humble, and then she'd log off, hunger unmet. Scrolling back now, she could see that Kelsey's Instagram had been sparser than usual. Just an occasional picture of the beach or her cat Max. Kelsey wasn't in college either, unlike just about everybody else. But in Ghana, she hadn't been online often enough to notice. Kelsey's emails were pedestrian and stilted. How are you? I am so proud of you for what you're doing. LA isn't the same without you. She was a terrible writer, always had been. Vanessa had been doing her English homework for her since they were 12 years old. Vanessa's father, by contrast, had sent paragraphs-long messages, 3 or 4 every time she checked, in which she zoned out while skimming, the same way she zoned out when he talked to her in real life. Still, She was sure there hadn't been any clues. When he picked her up at the airport, her father was dressed in his business uniform, a light gray suit with a blue shirt, no tie. He wrapped her in his arms, telling her she was too skinny but looked great, a mix of contradictory messages as usual, and she felt his stubble scrape against her ear. Also as usual, she felt overwhelmed by his body, his affection, while simultaneously wanting to be held next to it forever. Reflexively, she thought, as she had since her mother left, this is everything I have. This 5 o'clock shadow, this not completely effective antiperspirant, this forced but genuine joviality, this dad. They were happy to see each other, but still ran out of things to say by the time they hit the 4:05. So your flights were okay? You already asked me that. Sorry. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, smeared his chin with his palm. He seemed keyed up, thrilled to see her, almost too thrilled to speak, which was gratifying. So how's work? She asked. Great, hectic, super hectic, really. Kelsey is a huge help. Kelsey? Oh, right, the internship. She hasn't flaked on you? Her father frowned. Why would you say that? Come on, Dad, you always said yourself she isn't the most reliable person in the Western world. This tick of her father's, always to specify a geographical range, as in, this is the best hamburger in the Western world, used to drive her crazy until she ate at what she'd been told was the best burger place in Accra and thought, he has a point. She meant to tell him this once he laughed in recognition at hearing her use his own pet phrase. But he didn't laugh. Instead, his expression turned serious and he turned his head to look at her for so long that she was about to say, Dad, the road. But then he sighed, glanced back at the traffic and said, she's been a godsend, which was not a phrase she'd ever heard him use before in her life. So she said nothing. The highway rose and fell, the stutter and swerve of traffic as familiar as her own pulse, and beside it, palm trees and fast food signage poked out from the June gloom. The sunset was ebbing, leaving flashes of neon as its hopeful replacements. She wanted a milkshake. She wanted a taco. She wanted everything ice cold or piping hot, to dip her toes in the ocean, to rinse the gunk from her scalp. As he parked the car in the driveway, her father cleared his throat. There's something I have to tell you, he said, but then didn't say anything. Vanessa had her hand on the door handle, was halfway out of the car saying, tell me inside, because she couldn't wait to see her room, the kitchen with its well-stocked refrigerator. And so when he said, Kelsey's here, she only thought that he'd done this for her. What a sweet gesture, inviting her best friend to welcome her home. And she missed the part, or maybe he mumbled it, when he said, we're together. And he had to repeat it on the threshold as she opened the door to the house she used to call home. Kelsey was standing in the foyer, wearing shorts and a hoodie, one foot overlapping the other, and she gave Vanessa a hug and said, I guess he told you, I know, it's so weird, and held up her hand with the engagement ring. Vanessa thought, if she says, we didn't plan it, it just happened, I'm gonna kill her or myself. Kelsey started, and Vanessa didn't want to kill anybody, so she interrupted and said, heading for the kitchen, I'm starved.
Ooh, wow. And to start our conversation, I want to talk about this story because it's a nightmare. this is a nightmare of mine. Actually, no, let me be polite first before we start. How are you doing today, Alix? How's your day going?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I mean, listeners, before we started this, we were talking about our love of Billy Crudup. Crudup.
I think it's Crudup, but I'm not 100% sure.
Billy, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. And
we love you, Billy, no matter how your name is pronounced.
Know that we love you, Billy. We're currently wearing our Billy Crudup shirts. We have him plastered on our walls. I mean, we have to, right?
That's right. Well, it's all set up for our planning for our future Billy Crudup podcast, which will be an offshoot of this one.
In 100%, it'll be a spinoff, deep dive series, like a Making a Murder, but for us, it's Making Billy Crudup.
Oh, I love it. It's going to be huge. I think.
It's going to be huge. iHeartRadio, pick us up. We're ready. Well, I'm great. I'm happy you're having a great day. But now I want to talk about this deeply unsettling story.
Right.
Um,
Billy Crudup could play the father in the film version of this story, I think.
and I should play the best friend. I'm casting myself now. I am marrying Billy. Billy, you don't know this yet, but it might be a real engagement. You know, it's fine. It's fine.
No, anything can happen.
Anything can happen. No, this story is deeply unsettling, especially for like, I couldn't imagine. I mean, her reaction is so tame. And I mean, I feel like, yeah, she had to take a second before she really processes it. But I would leave or fight. One of that'd be my two reactions. What made you come up with this story? Like, of this just, I can't even think of the right word for what how this makes me feel. What made you come up with a specific story?
Well, to me, it's an interesting situation because it's a situation that is, as you say, deeply unsettling, and yet I feel like it's something that you could imagine happening, in the sense that it's also fairly pedestrian. Like, you do see middle-aged men who have relationships with much younger women, and you have to imagine that those younger women have friends their same age. And what if one of them was his daughter? Right? It's not beyond the realm of things that could happen. So I'm kind of drawn to those things that are like spectacular explosions of the everyday. You know what I mean? Like, where people blow up their lives or they take some extreme action, but it's still within the realm of what you could imagine happening, like within the day-to-day course of events. And I do think you're right that a lot of people, faced with the circumstances that Vanessa is faced with, they would just flip out, or they would scream and yell, or throw crockery, or leave in a squeal of car tires or whatever. But I think in my mind, she's so completely disoriented by the strangeness of the situation that she's sort of shuts down. And then once you don't react in the moment, you're kind of stuck in the situation. Like, she was so expecting to go home. Once she crosses the threshold, literally into the house, but also like, into the emotional situation, she's sort of enmeshed, and it takes her the rest of the story to get herself out of there again.
This reminds me of, like, for some reason, American Beauty comes to mind, because that kind of is, a lot of the plot. But like, if it took a dark turn at the end, and like, but like, it just, and you're right, there's something very pedestrian about that, about a man who like dates younger, but yeah, it could be your best friend. It could be. So what I'm saying is, listeners, beware. Know your friends.
It could happen to you.
It could happen to you. This is no, but all for the entire collection. That one I wanted to talk about a little bit, because I was just like, what? But like, the entire collection, I feel like there is this tone you set of like mixing comedy and darkness, pedestrian with fantastic in a way, or even just like heightened. What inspired this, or really not inspired this, like brought this through in your work here?
I'm definitely really attracted to that space where humor and pain, or like joking in the face of catastrophe, or in the face of things that are going on. I'm really, really attracted to it in the work of other people, and also my own work, and trying to kind of recreate that feeling. And I think it's partly because I have a fear of melodrama or of sensationalism in my own work. So I'm always worried that if I write some big scene where people are emoting dramatically, that it's going to take a turn into the soap opera. So I find myself undercutting it with a joke or an aside. And then I just really appreciate that when I encounter it in other places. I think it's a very natural human reflex. And I also think that a lot of humor, just arises out of pain, right? It comes out of our ways of coping with it. I mean, that's what a lot of jokes are. They're ways of deflecting trauma or violence. So to me, it's like a way of writing about those things, but slightly askew, or writing in a way that slightly displaces them, so that the darkness or the difficulty or the pain or the trauma, it's just under the surface, or it's just there off to the side, and it's there and it's palpable, but it's not like right in your face. And to me, that's interesting psychologically, and it's interesting aesthetically too.
This is, you know what? This is my therapist. I should send this to her, because she, this, all I do is make her laugh. And I'm like, oh, is that a trauma response to it? So thank you.
Give her my number. We'll talk about it.
Please. Maybe she'll figure out what's going on up here, because I don't know. No, there's this theme too that I see a lot in your stories, where people are seeing like other lives that it's like, it is American Beauty too, in a sense of people like changing. What I'm saying is, I want to watch American Beauty right now. I'm joking. No, there's a lot of people who are like seeing other lives they could take, other avenues in their life, other things that they want in their lives that they might be like the mundane everyday things are stopping them from. And even like themselves. Like, I feel like one thing I saw in a lot of the stories was a character being confronted with something different than what they thought that should be their life, and kind of reacting negatively to that. Was that something you purposely sought out there, or something that just came out naturally in the stories?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting when you put stories together in a collection and you see themes emerge that you didn't realize that you were actively writing toward. But of course, it's sort of like your obsessions or your preoccupations betray you, right? As much as you might think that you cloaked them in fiction, or that you were working in some radically different form or set of ideas, they're nonetheless related, right? A short story collection it's like a family, where you can see they're not all the same person, but there's a resemblance, there's a family resemblance across the story. So I didn't set out to write about it, but I do think that most of us dream of other lives, or fantasize about other things we might do. And that's a very, healthy and informative thing to do, actually, because it teaches you something about yourself and your areas of happiness or unhappiness, right? You don't usually fantasize about aspects of your life in which you're completely satisfied. So, those it's like a negative space, reflection of the things that you are missing. And I think, that said, it's also extremely hard to make change based on that. Like, you could know it and still not enact on it. So you find yourself, thinking about escape, because we all, like, the further you go into your life, the further you've like built yourself a cage. And it's not always a bad cage, but it's, your choices lead you down one set of paths and they rule out another set of paths. So I guess for me, I think there's an inevitable longing for escape or change or fantasy in human life. And if you indulge it too much, it can be pretty messy in the way that it kind of absents you from your actual lived life. And so messy places and missed opportunities, that to me is like really fertile territory for fiction, because that's where you can get into some really interesting kind of thorny thickets for people. And so that's a space that I often write into.
Well, it's also, and something that I love about that space too, and when I write my own things, it's something I love to talk about. And one of my favorite things is like family dramas to write about, because it's so universal. It's something that everyone in like anywhere they can respond to that. Like I do love a sci-fi. I do love a fantasy novel, because like it's fun to escape. You're escaping things. But I think with those, we are confronting things that we can put ourselves in that character's space and say, how am I kind of sharing the same circumstances this person is? And I feel like your novel does a lot of good circumstances there where it's like showing, oh, what would I do if I was in this scenario that I could easily be in? My best friend could marry my dad. Oh God, I hope not. Dad, don't listen to this. Dad, turn this off now. Turn this off now. It would traumatize me and I would not act well. But it could happen. The one that I actually really was just like, oh, what would I do in this, was the one where it's the girl, the woman visiting her, trying to save her cousin from a cult, but she can't figure out if it's a cult. Because I was just like, what would I? A part of me was like, yeah, this is nice. This is nice. Just like, I live right by the Scientology building in LA, and every time I drive past it, and there's like signs that says, "Are you lost? Or do you need help?" I like
Yes.
slowly drift my car over, like, yeah, that sounds nice. That sounds
Exactly.
nice. I'm like, what if one day I just found myself in there, and it seems nice. But it's like one of those things too, where it's like every day I joke where I'm like, joke in quotations, that I would love to like find a commune and leave all of this like worldly problems behind and just,
yeah, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want to live on a higher plane that is more
yeah.
spiritual or more simple, where
Mm,
choices are made for you, but in a nice way?
exactly. Right? It sounds
The
perfect.
seduction of a cult, I think, I think most of us would not join one, but there's
Probably.
probably, I don't know, but there, that's not to say that you can't see why people wouldn't, right? And
Right.
what it's offering is a very real response to unmet
Mhm.
needs that many of us have, or just like it's very hard to
Yeah.
live life and struggle through the world. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of, in the past year, I feel like there have been a lot of cult stories and documentaries. There's sort of a lot of cult discourse going
Mhm.
on right now, and there's a lot of it is sort of shocking and horrible, like, revelations about the nature of some cults. But I was sort of interested in, what if it was a little bit more of a gray area?
Right.
What if it was a cult that seemed cult adjacent,
Mhm.
cult-ish, and that the person facing it had a harder time deciphering whether or not it was okay for her family member to be integrated in it, and sort of found herself starting to understand and perhaps even wanting to participate. To me, that was more interesting than writing a
Mhm.
story that was like a clear rescue attempt of someone
Right.
from a place that was definitely bad for them.
Right. And I feel like in that, it just like makes it reminded me a lot of a TV show I watched. The TV show Better Things. Have you watched that show?
No, I don't know that one.
It's so amazing.
What is it?
Listeners,
Is
watch it.
Billy
It's,
Crudup in it?
I mean, maybe the new season, and I'm
Maybe.
crossing fingers. No, it's a Pamela Adlon, and it's like a fantastic
She's
show.
great.
She's amazing, but it's just based on her raising her daughters, and a lot of the show is like, is this the right way to like raise your kids? Is a
Mm.
big question, and it like really challenges the way to think about like motherhood and parenting and all
Mm.
this stuff. And I thought a lot about that when I read the story, because I'm like, yeah, it's challenging a lot of the ways I'm thinking about cult and community, and like what that means for, and like what that means for not maybe yourself, but for someone else who you see, who like maybe it's the better place for them, maybe they're a better person in this space. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is, let me leave this and go to Scientology because it sounds great.
I hope you'll
um,
be very happy there.
I think I will. I think that's what I was meant to be. Tom Cruise, leave the door open for me, I'm coming. um I mean, how did you write that one specifically? And I'm sorry I'm talking about this one a lot. I just love this story in there. How did you write that one without being seduced by that idea? Was there ever a point where you're like, this sounds nice?
Yeah, well, the story revolves around this main cult figure, the guru, and I thought it
Mhm.
would be interesting to play with kind of subverting or manipulating the trope of the guru. So he's not like someone who wears a robe or, anoints you with, special anointing fluid, whatever you call that. Now I
Right.
suddenly just blanked on what it is. So the story is called The Brooks Brothers Guru, and
Mhm.
he wears chinos and blue button-down shirts, and all the members of the cult have cocktails and talk about classical music and literature, and it's very sophisticated and civilized, right? It's sort of based on the idea of seducing people to some kind of romanticized vision of the past and of high culture and things that don't really exist anymore in the same way, if they ever did at all. And so I thought you could portray that as being seductive and charismatic to people, but ultimately in any situation like that, one person, like if the community is built around the charisma of one person, there is going to be a power dynamic there, and a system of power, or a hierarchy that has the potential to be abusive. And that's what winds up being hinted at in this story, is that he is in charge, he's manipulative, he's it's not an altruistic impulse that he has. But I was trying to keep it all in this very kind of gray area. And so that at the very end, this woman who has shown up there, that she could experience going away from the cult as like, she could simultaneously be grateful for it, that she's not in the cult, but also feel rejected at the same time. Because I thought that was more complex of a note to end on than her simply being like, oh, well, these people are bonkers and I don't want anything to do with them. What if it feels like a loss that she's not part of the cult, even though that's better?
And I mean, like, I feel like with any kind of group, like it exists in like smaller ways, if that makes sense. Like I think of like high school with like groups you were in, like theater kids, and I say that as an ex-theater kid. I'm so sorry to my theater community, but like there was, there's like those groups where like in a high school theater program, everyone like exists in this space, and sometimes you like, if you didn't get the lead in the musical that year, you might feel out of that space. You're looking in, you see the other people who are there and experiencing that, but like you're always looking in, you're never like in that. And that's what it kind of felt there for me too, where it's like, yeah, do you think that she left to find that community herself, or do you think that there's like she's still searching kind of thing?
I think she's still searching, and probably it's going to be a lifelong search, as it is for many of us. And I think one thing that interests me is the simultaneous stability and instability of any community or network like that, including like the family is a community, families of choice, the workplace is often a community like that, the cult in this book. And at any given time, there's the foundational aspect of that, and it can feel very safe and enclosed for you, but there can also be the threat of disruption or hierarchy, or someone being on the inside of it, moving to the outside of it, like you just described. It's never because of human nature, it's always going to be dynamic and shifting and not static.
And I mean, that has a lot to do, a lot of your stories are about that. The ones with the two girls who are the like ex-best friends, were they? Like they were close and they like keep in correspondence with each other. I feel like that does a great job of showing that people change, life goes on, life is an ever moving thing and it doesn't stop, which, in itself is there's a romance, the tragic romance in that. It's like we have these moments that are ephemeral, right? They only exist in our memories, and like we keep going on even when we don't want to. It's sad, but it's life. There was no question there.
Yeah, no,
I really was just making a declarative statement.
Oh, I love that. No, I thought it was really moving what you said. And I love that you described the story as a tragic romance, first of all. But I also love what you said about things being ephemeral. And to me, that's something that I really struggle with in life. And I also write about in my work, is like, just because something is ephemeral doesn't mean that it's not meaningful. And so to write about things that don't last or didn't last is a way of testifying to that meaning and retaining it for yourself somehow, even though the transience of it can be really hard to grapple with.
And I mean, like each short story feels like a moment like that, a moment that people want to hang on to, and like there are moments that people want to hang on to, and I think after reading each one, the readers will feel that too. They'll feel like, oh, I'm sad this ended. And I mean, that happens with so many good like books I've read. And those are my favorite kinds where I'm just like, it's good when you're like, oh, damn, that ended. I'm so sad now. But like your book, I mean, your book, I think it captures that for both the character and the audience of people who will be reading it.
Thank you. That's so kind of you to say. And that is one thing that I really love about writing short stories, is that to me, it's a little bit like a song. Like you can read it in one sitting, and then it lives on in your head. There's a sort of echo or a chord that can resonate in your head for the rest of the day. And
Right.
that's something I love about stories as a reader, and hope to achieve as a writer.
And it's just like it's a why did the word bite size come into that? It's kind of like that, but like it's like bite size in the sense of like I feel like a lot of especially in the past year and a half with like people like trying to like people trying to like read but being distracted by things. This is more attainable because you don't have to sit for hours and read this. You sit for an hour, read a story from there. You have it, that there's more, but you can sit with that specific story for a little bit. And I think that that's so important. That's so like necessary in literature. Like there needs to be, and there, I mean, longer stories are very important too. I love a nice big story that envelops me, but I also love stories that I can like sit with and after reading like a little bit of for a day and just be in that world for a second, like read it and then be in the world and really capture that, and then read more from that same author, read from that same family, as you said before, of work. It's so nice. Another thing that I want to talk about with this collection is that like it just the way that, and I kind of talked in it before, the relatability of like each story, like each story feels like the same world. Like even I felt like there's a suburban quality with it where I'm like, I feel like everyone could live in the same like cul-de-sac. And I say this as a suburb kid. It's a suburb kid who
I'm also from the suburbs, and I think it's just like it's in my bones somehow.
right.
The experience of growing up in suburbia, you can't
you can't
shed it.
You can't shed it. It's always
the
on
stink
you.
of suburbia. You can't wash it away.
You can't wash it away. But the thing with suburbia, as us suburban kids know, is that like it feels mundane, but there's like craziness happening behind every household there, and like there's 80 billion stories. It's we were talking about Mary Louise Parker earlier, and I'm going to bring in a Weeds reference. It's the theme song of Weeds, the little boxes on the hillside. It really is. It's like there's the houses that all look the same, but with different stories happening there. What did they used to say? I feel like in school they would be like, you never know what's happening behind every door. It was like a safety video for like, I don't know, something.
Dark.
But like, it's very dark. It's very dark. That was like a dark thing. But like, that's what this feels like too. Not the darkness. I mean, a little bit dark. But like there's these stories behind all these doors in these in this fictional suburb I've created for the characters. But
I feel like there's a kind of stereotype of suburbia as repressed and mundane or ordinary, and to me that was not my experience of it at all, in the sense that there was a lot going on. People did have sometimes very hilarious things going on, sometimes really tragic things going on, and once you got to know people and learned their interiority, it was really kind of a shocking diversity of experiences that were being collected there. So one of my kind of I don't know, aims as a writer, I think, is to talk about the drama of ordinary life. That like there's nobody who's like, you should be so lucky as to have an extremely boring life, but very, very few people do. And so a lot of the people in my stories are just, I don't know, middle class people in the suburbs who go to work and come home, but that doesn't mean that their lives are simple and uncomplicated, or that they don't have tremendous richness of like emotions and experiences that we can write about.
Well, it's also, and I feel like a lot of the crowd for like this book will be people who have maybe like not the stereotypical ordinary life, because I feel like there is that kind of dichotomy of people with ordinary lives wanting adventure, or people with adventurous lives wanting the ordinary. And
Yeah.
like I feel like there's, you balance those two very well in this, where like there's people who have crazy stuff going on but they're searching for like stability, or people
Yeah.
who have very ordinary stable lives searching for like
Right. Trying to blow it up.
blow it up. And like
Yeah.
there's, and you, yeah, no, you talk about that very well in your story. And I want to know, like, how do you not, do you feel like a personal sway in there yourself? Like, do you feel like, oh, this is something I'm searching for while through writing this?
I think it's probably a little bit of all of that, you know,
Mhm.
in my day-to-day life. There's a little bit in me that wants a quieter life, and there's a little bit in me that wants to blow things up, and there's a little bit
Right.
of me that would join a cult if it seemed like a nice place. And you
Mm.
know, that's, I mean, thank goodness I have this outlet of putting things in stories, because then I can I can explore all of these possible futures in the stories, and I don't have to misbehave quite so much in my
I
regular
don't
life.
have to like, because I was gonna say you can come join me at Scientology building. Let's go. They're
Welcome.
always looking for people. Uh, no, it's, and no, that, I mean, like, yeah, there's, was it, did it, writing at these stories? Oh, I can't speak. I'm so sorry. Did writing these stories make you feel like, or bring up anything to the surface in that way? And like you re-examining maybe not even your specific life, but how you see other people living their lives, like see, you know, behind some closed doors there. And don't give me, you don't have to give me any specifics. I don't want your friends to be like,
Well,
wait, were you
yeah,
talking about me
my
there?
friend Tom, let me tell you what I learned about him. That guy is a
Oh my
mess.
God.
No,
You
I'm
guys,
kidding.
I mean,
I, I think what I think what I've realized is I just really don't seek to villainize people or
mhm,
find them particularly heroic. Like most people are, you know, a cocktail of good and bad qualities. And a lot of it is relational. Like this is another thing that I find endlessly fascinating. Like you can see someone who seems really together at
mhm,
work, but their home life is a mess, or vice versa, or they're very good like spouse or partner, but they're not very good at some other thing. And I guess I'm endlessly fascinated by those kind of intersecting kind of spider web relationships that we have, and how you can be one person with your parents and another person with your workplace and another person with your child, and that we all contain these multitudes. I guess I think is
right.
it just makes people super interesting to write about. And I mean, I'm really drawn to writing through human curiosity, and to me it's kind of like sanctioned gossip, you know, like getting to write these stories is like imagining the kinds of things that you would talk about behind someone's back, but here it's
Right.
like allowed because it's my work.
So what you're saying is this is your outlet for gossiping.
It is
This is your outlet for
100%.
I mean, now it makes me want to like, I feel like I'm gonna go to like a salon and be like, did you hear about this story? And now that's how I'm gonna gossip
Oh,
now.
I have 100% written stories that were based on gossip that my hairdresser told me. And
Yes.
I'm also a compulsive eavesdropper. So anything that somebody says in a coffee shop is fair game to me.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
be careful what you say out in the world, because there can be writers, you know, lurking, preparing to harvest
exactly.
your material.
Prepare, like beware of writers. I feel like
Yes,
we can make
that's a
it.
lesson we should all learn. Yes, we're
Oh,
dangerous
hundred
people.
percent. If these books haven't taught us anything, it's that beware of these writers. No, that, I mean, yeah, you have to like, and that's the thing too. Like you have to. Would you say you have to have like an ear open at any time for these stories? Because like, it maybe not these specific stories, but stories in general, where you're like, do you think you're like not eavesdropping, but like your perception of things is kind of more heightened as a
Yeah.
writer now, seeing like stories everywhere.
I think that is a good quality for a writer to have.
Hmm.
Sure. I went to a writing program where I studied with Johnson, who, you know, he's a brilliant writer, but Jesus His Son and a bunch of other great books. Did
Oh,
I freeze?
yeah, you froze for a second. We'll edit that out. So could you repeat that?
Okay. Yeah. Um, I definitely think there's something about like a quality of attentiveness in writers that that can be really helpful. So one of my teachers in school was Dennis Johnson, who's an amazing writer. He wrote Jesus' Son and a bunch of other great books. Anyway, he used to talk about when he was writing, he became sticky to the world. Like he would go out into the world and things would stick to him, like passing conversations, the cloud cover, just the way that people look. He became sticky, and I always loved that image because I sort of pictured him like with like tons of post-it notes like stuck all over him. But I do think that's true, that when your mind is in that mode, you can become a kind of collector or curator of human moments, and you become really observant of them, and you kind of treasure them. Like to me, it's not like, I don't want it to sound like I'm being satirical about it, or that it's just a transaction. To me, it's an impulse to love and record the like foibles of people, and the funny things that people say, and the strange situations that people can get themselves into. And so I collect those in a notebook or a file on my computer, or just inside my head. And then when it comes time to write a story, I will sometimes take like 2 or 3 different elements from completely different situations. So one thing I overheard in a coffee shop, combined with one thing that my grandmother once told me about her childhood, combined with an image of a woman that I saw sitting on the bus. And I put those 3 things together, and through the juxtaposition of them, a story somehow emerges. And it's always a surprise to me, but I love the sense of discovery of that, of what happens when you put these different items together in one place.
It seems like kind of like being a private eye. You're like, you're just observing things and putting pieces together and coming up with you're like, it's like those pictures where it's like blurry, but you have to like unfocus your eyes to see it. Yeah, it's like one of those. And I mean, I feel like that's a beautiful quality, and you should go into investigative journal or investigative work now. Be a private eye. And
I would love that. I'm going to get a fedora and really go for it.
A long jacket and I love it. I love this. I love this journey for you, and I'm glad we went on this together to get here.
Me
too. We have to wrap up soon, but I had my last thing for you is out of all of these stories, did you have a favorite one that you either loved while you were writing, or looked back on and said, wow, this one is the one I just not even love the most, but just like really am proud of myself that I came up with this story? I don't know if I said that the right way.
That's such a nice question. I usually only see the flaws in my own work, so it's kind of hard for me to answer that.
You're a real writer then, is what I hear.
They're all terrible. Nobody should read them. That's my message to listeners. Yeah.
We actually had to steal this book from your computer to get it out there.
But yeah, I think there's the first story in the book is called The Point of No Return, and it's the one that you were talking about these 2 women who sort of go in and out of each other's lives. And I did like the way that it came out, and the way that it does flirt with like those qualities of strangeness that you mentioned earlier. It becomes almost like a fairy tale, and at the end, and a tragic romance. And I was happy with how it managed to go into those dimensions without being like super fantastical. It still has elements of that, and I was sort of interested and surprised by myself when that happened. So I liked that. And the original title of the story was Quarantine. And then I had to change it when the book came out, because between the time when I wrote it and the time that this book came out, quarantine has taken on a completely different meaning and resonance for all of us. So like, no stories, like they don't stay the same, even if the words in them are the same, they carry different meaning. So that was also a kind of instructive thing for me to learn. You can never predict what's going to happen in the world in the space of just a few short years.
Well, I feel like there is definitely a link between that story, I mean, what has happened in the past year and a half with like, just how we contact and, you know, keep in touch with each other too.
Yeah,
There's definitely a lot of
isolation and how you connect with people over social
Mhm.
media. Those are big themes in the story, and they wound up, being hugely important for all of us. I didn't know about
Right.
Zoom, or otherwise I might have written the whole story about Zoom. But as it is, it's mainly focused around social media and
Right.
how it keeps these two women connected off and on over many years.
And like, I mean, the amount of people in the past year and a half that I've reconnected with over social media, it's yeah, no, your story is very timely. It's very you wrote it exactly when you needed to, and that's fate. That's honestly that's fate right there. No, Alex, this has been so much fun to talk to you here,
It's been
and
lovely.
like
Thank
this
you
has
for the great
been
questions.
no, thank you for coming on and, you know, letting me.
Super fun.
The reason we brought up Billy Crudup before was because we were talking about how I'm the almost famous kid who's following you're my Billy Crudup is what I'm saying. You're that for me, and
It's an
that's
honor to be your Billy Crudup. My life's greatest privilege.
you know what, and I'm happy to give that to you. No, this has been fantastic, and your book is so good, and you should just be so happy and proud that we stole that from your computer and force it to come out. No, it's such good work, and
Thank you.
listeners, go out and buy this book. By the time this podcast will be out, it'll be on sale. The publishing date is the 27th, right?
That's right.
So a week from today. No,
Mm-hmm.
yes, a week from today. Wow.
Yes.
We're
Wow.
recording on the 20th of July. So
Mm.
it's a week from today. This book will be out, and you'll see it on our front podcast display shelf at the bookstore. So go and flip through it, buy it, and, you know, read a story every day, and, you know, just really get in that world. And um, yeah, just love it. And the cover is also really great too.
Yeah, I love the
Yeah.
cover. Yeah, I feel really happy with it, and it's very striking in
It's
more
very
ways than one.
striking. I feel like a lot of people will look at it and be like, "Oh my God, what is that sunshine that's coming from this cover?"
Yeah.
It's yeah, I think it's
It's
gonna
it's bright yellow cover, and I got it in the middle of like darkest January. Then they sent me the mock-up, and it was like a dark time in general, like dark
Mhm.
because it was winter, dark because it was the
Right.
pandemic, dark because it
Mhm.
was around January 6th, which
Yeah.
was a insurrection day, and
Yeah.
I was just like, wow, I'm really happy to have this literal bright spot that is my book and its cover.
I mean, it feels like it's what are those lamps? The sun lamps that you're supposed to get
Yes,
during
a
those times
sad
too.
lamp.
It's a
My
sad
book
lamp.
is a sad lamp for your soul.
It's beautiful, and I think that's what a better way to wrap up everything about this book than that. I'm gonna write that in like a Sharpie on the cover.
Please do.
I will. No, thank you again. The book, We Want What We Want by Alix Ohlin is now currently on sale. Go grab a copy and really just have a great time with all these stories. Alix, do you have anything you would like to say to the independent bookstore community before we go?
Oh, I'd love to say, as Ted Lasso says, I appreciate you. Appreciate you so much. I've
Oh,
spent so
yes.
many like happy hours in independent bookstores. I've
Mhm,
had the privilege of meeting a lot of independent booksellers
mhm,
who do incredible hand selling, like when I've been on book events. And they're just
mhm.
always like the best and smartest readers, and just like truly a delight to talk to them. Like booksellers are the best read people, and I
Mm.
always pick up great recommendations from them. So thank you all so much for all that you do to support writers. Really
No,
appreciate it.
and no, thank you for that. Thank you for your books. And honestly, it's like it's such a what's the word I'm looking for? A codependent relationship where
In the best
we
way,
in the best
codependent in the best way.
way. This is a good codependency. We're like we wouldn't have anything any amazing things to sell if it wasn't for your books, and it's just like we love selling them. I mean, that's the one thing about I feel like every bookseller can agree on. And like bookseller, librarians are in the bookselling family. I want to put that out
Absolutely,
there.
for
But
sure.
like we just love books, and we love selling a good book. It's so nice. It's such a nice feeling. So thank you for giving us one of those books to sell. And to the listeners, thank you for coming back to listen. And, thank you for supporting your local independent bookstore as well. And just have a great rest of your beautiful day, and go do something nice, like go buy a book.
Thank you for listening to the Skylight Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylightbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.